My supervisor slid a brown file across the desk and whispered, "Don't go home tonight. Take your son and leave town. They know what you did." The words hit me like ice water in my veins. Dr. Henry Wells, a man who'd never lost his composure in the 15 years I'd known him, was trembling. His usually steady hands shook as he pushed that envelope toward me, and his eyes, God, his eyes looked like he'd seen death itself walking through our office doors. I stared at him, my heart hammering so hard I could hear it in my ears. "Henry, what are you talking about? What did I do? Who knows what?" But he was already backing away from his desk, his face pale as paper, sweat beading on his forehead despite the air conditioning running full blast. This was the man who'd mentored me, who'd given me a chance when no other pharmaceutical company would touch a single mother with a gap in her employment history. Henry Wells didn't scare easily. Hell, I'd never seen him scare at all. He grabbed his coat with shaking hands and headed for the door, not even looking back at me. "Don't open that here," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Wait until you're somewhere safe. And Elena?" He paused at the doorway, his knuckles white as he gripped the handle. "Whatever you do, don't trust the police. Don't trust anyone except the number in that phone." Then he was gone, locking the office behind him with a sharp click that echoed in the sudden silence. I sat there staring at that brown envelope like it might explode. The words, "Do not open here," were scrawled across it in Henry's handwriting, normally so neat and precise. But this looked like he'd written it while his hands were shaking. The anger started then, a slow burn in my chest. What the hell was going on? What had I supposedly done that was so terrible it required cryptic warnings and midnight escapes? "You have to understand, my name is Elena Cruz, and I'm 32 years old. I'm a medical data analyst, not some international spy or corporate whistleblower. I live in a modest 2-bedroom apartment in San Diego with my 8-year-old son, Luca. And until that morning, my biggest worry was whether his science fair project on ocean currents would be ready in time. I'm nobody special. I'm just a woman who's been rebuilding her life piece by piece after years of struggle, finally feeling like maybe, just maybe, things were going to be okay. After Luca's father walked out when our son was 2, I spent years working double shifts at a medical billing company, scraping together enough money for community college classes, fighting tooth and nail for every opportunity that came my way. When Nova Gene Systems finally hired me 3 years ago, it felt like winning the lottery. Good pay, stable hours, benefits that actually covered my son's health care. I thought I'd found my safe harbor. Nova Gene handles confidential pharmaceutical trial data, the kind of sensitive information that determines which drugs make it to market and which ones disappear into corporate vaults forever. It's methodical work, reviewing clinical trial results, cross-referencing patient data, ensuring everything meets FDA compliance standards. Nothing glamorous, nothing dangerous. Just me, my computer, and endless spreadsheets of medical statistics. Or so I thought. That morning had started like any other. Luca and I shared breakfast. Cereal for him, black coffee for me, because I'd run out of milk again, while he chattered about his science project. "Mom, did you know that ocean currents can move water thousands of miles? It's like the ocean has its own highway system." His enthusiasm was infectious, and I found myself smiling despite the early hour. These moments were what I lived for, my son's curiosity, his joy in learning, the simple pleasure of watching him grow into this amazing little person. I dropped him off at school, kissing his forehead and promising to help him finish his display board that evening. "Love you, Mom," he called out as he ran toward the building, his backpack bouncing against his shoulders. "Love you too, baby," I called back, watching until he disappeared through the doors. It was a perfect morning, sunny and warm, with that crisp October air that made everything feel possible. But as I drove to work, something felt off. The familiar route seemed different somehow, though I couldn't put my finger on why. The usual morning traffic, the same billboards and strip malls, but there was an undercurrent of tension I couldn't shake. By the time I reached the Nova Jean building, that feeling had settled into a knot in my stomach. The moment I walked through the lobby, I knew something was wrong. The security cameras that usually blinked their steady green lights were flashing red. The receptionist, who normally greeted everyone with a bright smile, was staring at her computer screen with a worried frown. Two men in dark suits stood by the elevator, men I'd never seen before, with earpieces and the kind of alertness that screamed federal agents or private security. The elevator ride to the 7th floor felt endless. My key card beeped as usual when I swiped it, but the hallway beyond was eerily quiet. No morning chatter from the break room, no keyboards clicking, no phones ringing, just silence that felt heavy and wrong. I made it maybe 10 steps toward my office when Henry's door opened and he gestured frantically for me to come in. That's when my world ended. Now, sitting in my car in the office parking garage, I stared at that envelope with a mixture of rage and terror. The anger was growing stronger, white-hot fury at being dragged into something I didn't understand, at having my carefully rebuilt life threatened by forces I couldn't even identify. Who the hell did these people think they were? What gave them the right to turn my world upside down, to threaten my child, to make me run like some kind of criminal? But underneath the anger was fear. Raw, primal fear for my son, for myself, for the life we'd built together. If Henry Wells, steady, reliable Henry Wells, was scared enough to risk everything to warn me, then whatever was coming was real. And it was bad. I drove home through streets that suddenly felt hostile, checking my rearview mirror every few seconds, jumping at every unexpected sound. The 20-minute drive to my apartment complex stretched into an eternity of paranoid surveillance. Every car behind me was a potential threat. Every stranger on the sidewalk could be watching, waiting. The anger and fear warred in my chest until I felt like I might throw up. My hands were shaking as I unlocked my apartment door. Our home, mine and Luca's sanctuary, felt violated somehow, as if invisible eyes were watching from every corner. I pulled the curtains closed and sat at my kitchen table, that brown envelope in front of me, like a bomb waiting to explode. When I finally tore it open, my world collapsed entirely. 2 train tickets to Missoula, Montana, departing that evening. A new cell phone with only one number programmed into it, labeled simply as help. A photograph that made my blood turn to ice. Luca walking to school that very morning, taken from across the street by someone with a telephoto lens. Someone had been watching my son, photographing him, and the fury that erupted in my chest was unlike anything I'd ever felt. But it was the note that broke me, handwritten in Henry's familiar script, but hurried, desperate. Elena, you uncovered something during yesterday's system audit, something they've killed to protect before. They think you know what it means. Get Luca and run. Don't trust the police. They have people everywhere. The phone will connect you to someone who can help, but only use it once you're on the train. I'm sorry. I should have protected you better. H. The system audit. Jesus Christ, the system audit. Yesterday, I'd been asked to run a routine compliance check on some older trial data. Pharmaceutical companies are required to maintain their records for years, and periodic audits ensure everything's still accessible and properly categorized. It was mundane work, the kind of thing I could do in my sleep. I'd accessed dozens of files, cross-referenced patient identification numbers, verified data integrity protocols. But there had been something strange, a cluster of files that were heavily encrypted, far beyond the normal security protocols we used for standard trial data. When I tried to access them using my normal credentials, I'd been blocked. So I'd used an administrative override, something I'd done hundreds of times before for corrupted or mislabeled files. It was routine. It was nothing. Except apparently it was everything. The rage that consumed me then was nuclear. These bastards, whoever they were, had been using my son as leverage. They'd photographed my child, invaded our lives, turned us into targets because I'd done my job, because I'd accessed files I was authorized to access as part of a routine audit. The injustice of it, the sheer calculated cruelty, made me want to burn the whole world down. I started throwing things into a backpack with shaking hands. Clothes for Luca and me, his favorite stuffed animal, the emergency cash I kept hidden in a coffee can, our important documents. My movements were sharp and angry, each item shoved into the bag with unnecessary force as fury and terror battled for control of my emotions. That's when I heard the car doors slam outside. I peered through the edge of the curtain and felt my heart stop. A silver sedan had pulled up across the street, and two men in suits were getting out. They moved with purpose, scanning the building, talking into earpieces. One of them pointed directly at my apartment. The phone rang, the new phone Henry had given me. "Elena Cruz?" The voice was female, professional, urgent. "Who is this?" "Someone who's trying to keep you and your son alive. They're already in your neighborhood. You need to exit through the back of the building immediately. Take only what fits in one bag. Do not use the front entrance. Do not go to your car. Do you understand?" "I don't understand any of this." The words exploded out of me, years of frustration and fear and rage condensed into that single sentence. I don't know what I did. I don't know who these people are. I just want my son to be safe. "Then trust me and move, now." Through the window, I watched the men walk toward my building's front entrance. The rage was choking me now, making it hard to breathe. These faceless monsters were hunting me like an animal, threatening my child, destroying everything I'd worked so hard to build. And for what? Some files? Some data I'd accessed as part of my job? I grabbed the backpack and ran for the fire escape, my whole body shaking with fury and adrenaline. The metal stairs clanged under my feet as I descended, each step feeling like it might be my last moment of freedom. At the bottom, I could hear voices in the front lobby, calm, professional voices asking questions about apartment 4B. The walk to Luca's school was a nightmare of hypervigilance and suppressed panic. Every shadow could hide an enemy. Every stranger could be watching. Every sound could signal danger. But underneath it all was the molten core of my rage. How dare they do this to us? How dare they threaten an innocent child because his mother did her job too well? When I reached the school, I forced myself to calm down, to paste on a normal expression for the secretary. "I need to pick up Luca Cruz. Family emergency." The lie came easily, though my hands were still shaking as I signed him out. Luca took one look at my face and knew something was wrong. "Mom, what's happening?" He was only 8, but he'd learned to read my moods. to sense when our carefully constructed world was under threat. "We're going on an adventure, baby," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "A surprise trip. We need to go right now, okay?" His eyes widened with concern, but he nodded. He'd learned young that sometimes Mommy had emergencies that required immediate action, that sometimes we had to be flexible and brave. It broke my heart that he'd had to learn those lessons, but right then I was grateful for his resilience. The bus ride to the train station was agony. Every face around us could belong to someone hunting us. Every stop could bring new danger. I held Luca close, feeling his small body warm against mine, and the protective fury in my chest burned brighter. Whatever these people wanted, whatever I'd stumbled into, they would not hurt my son. I would die first. At the station, I used cash to upgrade our tickets to a private sleeper compartment. The last thing we needed was to be exposed in a crowded car where anyone could recognize us. As the train pulled away from San Diego, I watched the city lights fade through the window and felt something die inside me. We were leaving everything we'd built, everything we'd fought for, because some corporate monsters couldn't stand the thought of their secrets being exposed. Luca fell asleep against my shoulder somewhere outside Los Angeles, and I held him tight as the train rocked through the darkness. The anger had settled into something deeper now, something that would sustain me through whatever was coming. They'd made this personal when they threatened my child. They'd declared war on everything I held sacred, and I was going to make them pay for it. It was near midnight when someone knocked softly on our compartment door. I was instantly awake, every muscle tense, ready to fight or run or die protecting my son. But the voice that came through the door was calm, reassuring. "Ms. Cruz, my name is Cole Maddox. I'm a federal cybersecurity officer. Dr. Wells sent me." I opened the door carefully, keeping the chain latched. The man on the other side was maybe 40, with graying hair and tired eyes that looked like they'd seen too much. He showed me credentials that looked official, but after everything that had happened, I trusted nothing and no one. "Prove it," I said, my voice hard with suspicion and rage. He pulled out a phone and showed me a video. Dr. Henry Wells, sitting in what looked like a safe house somewhere, his face bruised but his eyes alert. "Elena, if you're seeing this, then you've met Agent Maddox. You found what they killed my wife for 3 years ago. Sarah died because she discovered the same files you accessed yesterday. Don't let them bury the truth again. Trust Cole. He's one of the good guys." The video hit me like a physical blow. Henry's wife, Sarah, had died in a car accident 3 years ago. At least, that's what we'd all been told. Single car collision on a rainy night, probably fell asleep at the wheel. But now, seeing Henry's battered face, hearing him say she'd been murdered, the rage that filled me was incandescent. I unlatched the door and let Cole Maddox into our compartment. Luca stirred but didn't wake, and I was grateful. This conversation wasn't for 8-year-old ears. "Tell me everything," I said, my voice deadly quiet. "Tell me what these bastards did, and tell me how we're gonna make them pay." Cole settled into the seat across from me, his expression grim. "What you accessed yesterday wasn't just pharmaceutical trial data. Those encrypted files contain evidence of illegal human experimentation, funded by government black budgets and private military contractors. Novagene has been conducting trials on vulnerable populations, homeless veterans, undocumented immigrants, prisoners, testing experimental drugs and biological agents that would never pass ethical review." The words hit me like physical blows. Human experimentation. Vulnerable populations. People who wouldn't be missed, whose suffering could be hidden behind corporate veils and government classifications. The anger inside me was transforming into something else, a cold, calculating fury that demanded justice. Who's behind it? Senator Marcus Hale chairs the Defense Appropriations Subcommittee. On paper, he's fighting for veterans' rights and national security. In reality, he owns a network of shell companies that funnel defense contracts to Novagene for research that's banned under international law. The data you accessed contains payment records, test subject identification numbers, mortality rates, everything we need to bring down the whole operation. Senator Hale, I'd seen him on the news, a silver-haired man in expensive suits who spoke passionately about protecting American lives. And all the while, he was authorizing experiments on the most vulnerable Americans, treating human beings like laboratory rats. The hypocrisy of it, the sheer evil, made me want to scream. Sarah Wells discovered this 3 years ago? Cole nodded grimly. She was a data analyst, too, working on a similar audit. She tried to go through proper channels, file a whistleblower complaint with the FDA. 2 days later, her car ran off the road. No witnesses, no evidence of mechanical failure, case closed. And Henry knew? Henry suspected, but he couldn't prove anything, and he was terrified they'd come after him next. When you accessed those files yesterday, it triggered security protocols that flagged your credentials. By this morning, they knew exactly who you were and where to find you. The pieces were falling into place, painting a picture of systematic corruption and murder that stretched from pharmaceutical companies to the highest levels of government. These weren't just corporate criminals. They were monsters who killed anyone who threatened their profits, who experimented on human beings like they were disposable test subjects. But they'd made one crucial mistake. They'd threatened my son. "What's the plan?" I asked, my voice steady despite the rage burning in my chest. "We have a secure location in Montana where we can analyze the data you accessed. Dr. Wells managed to copy some of the files before they locked down the system, but we need your login credentials to access the rest. Once we have everything, we can coordinate with international media outlets and law enforcement agencies that aren't compromised." "And if they find us first?" Cole's expression darkened. "Then we make sure the evidence gets out posthumously." The train rocked through the darkness, carrying us toward an uncertain future. I looked at my sleeping son, his face peaceful and innocent in the dim light, and felt the protective fury inside me crystallize into something unbreakable. These monsters had declared war on everything I loved. They'd killed Sarah Wells for trying to expose their crimes. They'd threatened my child to keep their secrets buried, but they'd picked the wrong mother to mess with. We reached the Montana safe house just after dawn, a remote cabin surrounded by pine trees and protected by electronic surveillance systems that Cole assured me were state-of-the-art. Luca woke up excited about the adventure, and I managed to smile and play along while my heart was breaking. He shouldn't have to live like this, hidden away like fugitives, because adults had chosen greed and power over basic human decency. Cole set up his equipment while I made breakfast from supplies that had been pre-positioned at the cabin. Scrambled eggs and toast, orange juice for Luca, coffee strong enough to wake the dead for me. Normal activities that felt surreal in the midst of our nightmare. That's when everything went to hell. The security alarm started screaming at exactly 8:47 a.m. Cole's equipment lit up with warnings as motion sensors detected multiple vehicles approaching through the forest. Professional teams, moving in coordinated patterns, surrounding our position. "They found us," Cole said, his voice grim as he grabbed weapons from a hidden cache. Elena, take Luca to the basement safe room. Lock the door and don't come out until I give you the all clear. Mom, I'm scared, Luca whispered, clinging to my hand as explosions of fury and terror warred in my chest. I know, baby. We're going to play a hiding game, okay? Just like hide and seek, but really, really important that we stay hidden. The basement safe room was reinforced concrete and steel, designed to withstand everything short of a direct missile strike. I sealed us inside and held my son close while the sound of gunfire erupted above us. Each shot felt like a nail in the coffin of the life we'd tried to build, and the rage inside me was a living thing, demanding revenge against the monsters who'd forced us into this hole in the ground. Minutes stretched into hours. The shooting stopped. Footsteps moved overhead, too many for just Cole. Male voices, calm and professional, discussing search patterns and extraction procedures. They were hunting us methodically, thoroughly, like the professionals they were. That's when the lights went out. Emergency power kicked in, bathing us in red light that made everything look like a scene from hell. My phone, the one Henry had given me, buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Finish what we started. Upload everything. Cole had given me access codes before the attack began, telling me that if anything happened to him, I was the only one who could complete the mission. In the corner of the safe room was a computer terminal connected to secure satellite uplinks, designed for exactly this scenario. I looked at my son, huddled in the corner, trying to be brave for his scared mother. The rage inside me crystallized into perfect clarity. These bastards had destroyed our lives, murdered innocent people, conducted illegal experiments on vulnerable human beings. They thought they could silence the truth through violence and intimidation. They were wrong. I powered up the terminal and began uploading everything: files, documents, payment records, medical data, correspondence between Senator Hale and Nova Gene executives, terabytes of evidence flowing through encrypted channels to media outlets around the world. Every piece of data was a weapon aimed at the heart of their conspiracy, every document a nail in their collective coffin. The upload progress bar crawled forward with agonizing slowness. 30%, 45%, 60%. Above us, the footsteps were getting closer, more systematic. They were checking every room, every hiding place. "Mom, what are you doing?" Luca asked, his voice small and scared. "I'm making sure the bad people can't hurt anyone else, baby. I'm telling the truth about what they did." 75%, 80%, 90%. The door handle rattled. They'd found us. 95%, 98%, 99%. The lock began to give way under their tools. 100%, upload complete. I grabbed Luca and pulled him behind the computer desk as the door exploded inward. Armed men in tactical gear flooded the room, shouting orders, weapons trained on us. But it was too late. The truth was already spreading across the internet like wildfire, beyond their ability to contain or suppress. "It's done," I said, standing up slowly with my hands visible, making sure they could see I wasn't armed. "The whole world knows what you did." One of them, the team leader I assumed, spoke into his radio. "Package secured, but the data's already in the wind. Containment has failed." Within hours, the story was everywhere. Global news networks picked up the leaked documents and ran with them. Senator Marcus Hale's name was splashed across every front page and news website in the world. Nova Gene's stock price crashed as investors fled. Congressional hearings were announced. International law enforcement agencies opened investigations. The raid on our safe house became a rescue operation as FBI teams arrived to take us into protective custody. Cole Maddox survived his injuries and was hailed as a hero. Dr. Henry Wells emerged from hiding to testify before Congress about his wife's murder and the conspiracy he'd helped expose. But for me, sitting in a federal witness protection facility with my son, watching Senator Hale's arrest on live television, the victory felt hollow. We'd won, but at such a cost. Our old lives were gone forever, destroyed by forces beyond our control. Luca would grow up knowing that his mother was a whistleblower, that we'd always be looking over our shoulders, that the price of truth was everything we'd once held dear. The anger that had sustained me through the darkest moments was still there, but it had evolved. No longer the white-hot fury of a mother protecting her child, but a cold, determined rage against a system that allowed such monsters to flourish. They'd made me into a weapon against them, and I intended to keep fighting until every last one of them was behind bars. I wasn't a spy or a hero or some kind of action movie protagonist. I was just a woman who'd done her job too well, who'd stumbled across evidence of systematic evil and refused to let fear silence the truth. They'd tried to destroy us, but instead, they'd created something more dangerous than they could have imagined. A mother with nothing left to lose, and the entire world listening to her story. The truth is never safe, but it's always worth fighting for. And sometimes, if you're willing to sacrifice everything to protect it, the truth can bring down empires built on lies and blood. If this story moved you, if it made you angry about the injustices that still flourish in the shadows of our world, then share it. Tell others where you heard it, because truth has a way of finding ordinary people when they least expect it. And when it finds them, they have a choice. Stay silent and let the monsters win, or stand up and fight, no matter the cost. I made my choice. Now it's time to make yours. The anger and pain I carry will never fully heal. Every day, I wake up knowing that we can never go home, never return to the simple life we once cherished. But I also wake up knowing that because of what we sacrificed, other families won't have to face the same nightmare. Other children won't become test subjects for corporate monsters. Other mothers won't have to choose between safety and justice. That knowledge doesn't erase the rage that burns in my chest, but it gives it purpose. It transforms personal pain into collective action, individual suffering into societal change. They thought they could silence us with fear and violence, but instead, they gave us the strongest motivation of all, the fury of a mother who will never stop fighting for what's right. The war isn't over. It may never be over, but we won this battle, and that's enough for today. Tomorrow, we'll fight again.